The Lancaster mansion did not simply sit on its vast, manicured lawn. It presided over it, a monument to wealth so profound it seemed to silence the very air around it. The morning sun, pale and crisp, glinted off rows of spotless windows, each pane a testament to an army of staff who worked invisibly to maintain this perfect illusion. Inside, the air smelled of lemon polish, expensive beeswax candles, and the faint, cloying sweetness of the product that had built this empire, Lancaster Pure Wellness Oils. In her cavernous kitchen, a space of cold marble and stainless steel that was rarely used for actual cooking, Sarah Lancaster was preparing for war. Her battlefield was the boardroom, her armor a ruthlessly tailored white suit, and her opponent the single most important man she had ever met, investor David Chen. $1 billion hung in the balance, the final, glittering jewel in the crown she had spent a decade forging. Sarah paced the length of the Italian tile, the sharp click of her heels a staccato counterpoint to the frantic rhythm of her own heart. She was not a woman prone to visible nerves, but today was different. Today was the culmination of everything. She held a beautiful amber-colored bottle in her hand, its glass etched with elegant, swirling script. "The key," she muttered to herself, her voice echoing in the sterile room, "is the story. It's all in the story." The story was that Lancaster Pure was built on ancient, sacred recipes, secrets whispered to her grandmother, Eleanor Lancaster, by a mysterious wise woman during a transformative journey through India decades ago. It was a story of exotic discovery, of privileged access to the mystic East, a story that justified the exorbitant price tag on each small vial of oil. Across the house, in a small, sunlit room adjacent to the kitchen that was a world away from the opulent main rooms, Riya Sharma was also preparing. As the daughter of the Lancaster family's longtime maid, Mira, Riya's preparations were of a different, more practical nature. She carefully polished a tray of crystal water glasses until they shone, the cloth in her hand moving with a practiced ease. Her mother, Mira, was arranging delicate pastries on a porcelain platter, her movements calm and efficient after 20 years of service in this house. Riya was a quiet, observant young woman with intelligent eyes that missed very little. She had grown up within the walls of this gilded cage, fluent in both the language of her mother's home and the language of her employer's world. She knew the truth of the Lancaster home, the cracks in the perfect facade that were invisible to outsiders. Sarah's rehearsal grew louder, her voice straining with the effort of pronouncing the Hindi names she had given to her products. "And this," she declared to her own reflection in the dark oven door, "is our most precious blend, Surya Kiran, the first ray of the sun." Her pronunciation was clumsy, the vowels all wrong, the rhythm of the words completely butchered. Riya, carrying the tray of glasses into the kitchen, heard it. The error was like a nail on a chalkboard to her ear, a jarring dissonance in the otherwise smooth performance. Without thinking, focused on her task, she softly corrected the pronunciation. "It's Surya Kiran, ma'am," she said, placing the emphasis on the correct syllables, making the words flow like they were meant to. "You have to connect the sounds." The room went cold. Sarah stopped her pacing and turned slowly, her eyes narrowing to slits. The correction, offered without malice, was a grenade tossed into the heart of Sarah's carefully constructed reality. She saw not helpfulness but insubordination. She saw her own ignorance reflected back at her by the one person in the room she considered beneath notice. "What did you just say?" Sarah's voice was a low, dangerous whisper. Mira instantly stopped what she was doing, her body tensing. I just meant," Riya began, but Sarah cut her off. "You just meant to tell me how to speak? You, a maid's daughter, presume to correct me about my family's legacy?" The humiliation was public and sharp. "You know nothing about refinement, about heritage. You know a common street language. I am talking about my grandmother's sacred wisdom. Know your place." The words hung in the air, heavy and cruel. Mira rushed forward, pulling Riya back, bowing her head slightly to Sarah. "So sorry, Miss Sarah. She did not mean it. Forgive her, please." Sarah dismissed them with a wave of her hand, her face a mask of contempt, the incident already being filed away as a minor irritation from the help. The doorbell chimed, a deep, resonant gong that signaled the start of the performance. David Chen was ushered in. He was a man of understated elegance, his suit impeccable, his handshake firm, and his eyes missed nothing. He was polite, engaged, and thoroughly scrutinizing everything. Sarah was all charm and grace now, the perfect hostess and visionary CEO. The tour of the mansion was a calculated part of the pitch, designed to showcase the luxury that the Lancaster Pure brand embodied. They ended up in the blending room, A pristine laboratory of sorts with gleaming copper distillers and shelves lined with hundreds of the beautiful bottles. David listened intently to Sarah's well-rehearsed story of her grandmother's journey, nodding politely, though a keen observer might have noticed a slight flicker in his eyes when she stumbled over the foreign phrases. He picked up a bottle, holding it up to the light. The oil inside was a deep, emerald green. The label was a work of art, with flowing Hindi calligraphy beneath the English name, Viridian Essence. David pointed to the elegant script. "This is beautiful work, Ms. Lancaster. The authenticity of the presentation is remarkable. Tell me," he asked, his tone one of genuine curiosity, "this specific word here, what is its deeper meaning? It adds such a layer of genuine charm to the brand." Sarah's smile tightened imperceptibly. She had memorized the answers to questions about the oil's effects, their rarity, their cost. She had not memorized a direct translation of the decorative text her graphic designer had assured her looked authentic. Her mind raced, scrambling for a safe, poetic answer. "Oh, that," she said, her laugh a little too bright. "It is an ancient term. It speaks to the concept of, pure light. The inner light of the plant's soul." She hoped it sounded vague and profound enough to be convincing. David's polite smile didn't waver, but a tiny crease appeared between his brows. The word she described and the word on the label did not seem to align in his mind. Riya was in the room refilling a water pitcher. She heard Sarah's answer. She looked at the bottle in David Chen's hand. And she knew. She knew the word on that label was not pure light, or anything even close to it. It was a simple, common word. A word that, in this context, was utterly damning. A silent war raged within her. She remembered the sting of Sarah's humiliation, the warning in her mother's eyes. She thought of keeping her head down, doing her job, staying in her designated place. But the lie was so vast. It was a billion-dollar lie built on the theft of a culture she called her own. The silence stretched, becoming uncomfortable. David Chen was still looking at Sarah, waiting for a better explanation she could not provide. Finally, conscience overriding fear, Riya took a small step forward. Her voice, though quiet, was clear and cut through the tension in the room like a knife. "I am sorry, sir," she said, addressing David Chen directly. "But that is not what it says." The silence that followed Riya's words was not merely an absence of sound. It was a physical presence, thick and heavy, swallowing the pristine air-conditioned atmosphere of the blending room. For 3 full seconds, the only movement was the subtle shift in David Chen's expression, his politely curious mask melting into one of intense, focused scrutiny. His gaze flicked from Riya's earnest, apprehensive face to Sarah Lancaster's, which had undergone a terrifying transformation. The flawless, confident CEO had vanished, replaced by a woman whose features were contorted by a pure, incandescent rage so potent it seemed to bleach the color from her skin and tighten the skin across her cheekbones. Sarah's reaction was not one of confusion, but of immediate, defensive fury. The lie had been called out directly, and her entire being revolted against the exposure. "How dare you!" The words erupted from her, a venomous hiss that shattered the silence. She took a sharp step towards Riya, her hand slicing through the air in a gesture of furious dismissal. "You forget yourself. You are here to serve water, not to speak. Get out of this room immediately." She turned to David Chen, her attempt at a composed laugh coming out as a strangled, desperate sound. "Mr. Chen, please, you must excuse this absurd interruption. The girl is clearly bitter, seeking some pathetic moment of attention. She's jealous, nothing more. This is why one must be so careful with staff these days." Her words were meant to belittle, to reduce Riya's stunning declaration to the petty grievance of a disgruntled employee, a speck of dust on the magnificent canvas of her billion-dollar presentation. But David Chen was not a man who dismissed specks of dust. He was a man who built his fortune on examining them under a microscope. He did not look at Sarah. His entire attention remained fixed on Riya, who stood her ground, though her hands, clenched at her sides, trembled slightly. He held up a hand, a calm, authoritative gesture that instantly halted Sarah's tirade more effectively than any shout could have. "Wait," he said, his voice low and even, a stark contrast to the hysterical pitch of Sarah's. He addressed Riya directly, his tone not accusatory but inquisitive, like a scholar presented with a fascinating new text. "You speak with certainty. Please continue. What does it say then?" The invitation, delivered with such calm authority, was both a relief and a new terror for Riya. There was no going back now. The path ahead led only through the heart of the lie. She took a small, steadying breath, her eyes meeting his. "Sir, the word written there is Paani." She pronounced it clearly, the simple common word sounding utterly alien in the context of the luxurious, supposedly sacred oil. It does not mean pure light or anything like that. It is the Hindi word for water. It means water. She paused, letting the sheer ridiculous banality of it sink in. A billion-dollar company had decorated its flagship product with the word water. The humiliation for Sarah was absolute and visceral. A choked, incoherent sound escaped her lips. David Chen's eyebrows rose almost imperceptibly. He did not look angry yet. He looked profoundly intrigued, like a detective who has just found the first loose thread of a vast conspiracy. He reached for another bottle, this one a golden amber color labeled Surya Kiran, the very oil Sarah had mispronounced earlier. He pointed to the script. And this? What does this say? Riya's voice grew stronger, fueled by a sense of righteous exposure. That script, sir, it says, Nariyal ka tel. It is not an ancient or sacred phrase. It means coconut oil. It is the most basic common cooking oil found in every kitchen in India. You can buy a liter of it at any market for a few dollars. She moved then, not with aggression, but with the purpose of a guide leading a tour through a museum of falsehoods. She picked up another bottle, a deep purple one. This one, Nilkamal, the label says Bangan. That means eggplant. Probably referring to the color. Another, a vibrant red. This says Imli, tamarind. A common, sour fruit. With each translation, she stripped away another layer of the exquisite fantasy Sarah had woven. The mysterious, potent elixirs were revealed to be nothing more than common coconut oil, perhaps infused with everyday ingredients like turmeric or tamarind, their value multiplied 1,000-fold by exotic lies and beautiful packaging. David Chen's intrigue had now curdled into a cold, hard anger. It was not the hot, explosive rage of Sarah, but a deep, chilling disgust. He was not just a businessman who had nearly been swindled. He was a man of principle who valued authenticity above all. He watched as Riya, with quiet authority, dismantled the entire foundation of Lancaster Pure. The sacred family secrets were revealed to be the mundane, practical knowledge of everyday Indian life, the very culture Sarah had appropriated and mocked. He thought of Riya's gentle correction earlier and Sarah's vicious put-down. He saw the entire, ugly picture, the exploitation, the cultural theft, the arrogance, and the profound lack of integrity. He finally turned to Sarah. She was no longer furious, she was deflated, her posture slumped, her eyes wide with a dawning, horrified understanding of her ruin. She had no words left. No story could possibly cover this. David's voice, when he spoke, was quiet, measured, and carried more finality than any scream. Ms. Lancaster, he began, each word dropping like a stone. My capital investment is not merely a transaction. It is a partnership built on trust, on authenticity, and on respect. You have demonstrated you possess none of these qualities. You have built a palace on a foundation of sand and lies. You belittled this young woman for her knowledge, the very knowledge you stole from to create your fantasy. You humiliated her for speaking the truth you could not even begin to comprehend. He set the bottle of Surya Kiran down on the counter with a quiet, definitive click. The deal is off. There will be no partnership. There will be no investment. He did not wait for a response. He turned his back on her, the ultimate dismissal. His attention returned to Riya, his expression shifting from icy contempt to one of deep respect. Thank you, he said to her, his voice sincere. Your integrity today saved me from a very costly mistake, but more importantly, it exposed a profound injustice. Would it be possible, he asked, his tone now one of genuine request, to speak with you and your mother privately? He gestured toward the door, away from the crumbling ruins of Sarah Lancaster's empire. The chapter closed not on Sarah's humiliation, but on the quiet, powerful dignity of the truth-teller, walking away from the lie with the investor who valued her honesty more than he had ever valued Sarah's beautiful, empty bottles. The weeks that followed the implosion in the blending room were not kind to Sarah Lancaster. The pristine silence of her mansion was no longer peaceful. It was oppressive, a constant reminder of the life that had evaporated in the span of a single conversation. The news of the scandal broke not with a bang, but with a series of meticulous, devastating articles in financial journals. Lancaster Pure's billion-dollar mirage, the headlines read. Cultural theft exposed in wellness industry. Investor David Chen exposes fraudulent empire. The lawsuits began to arrive, thick creamy envelopes that felt like lead weights, from investors, from distributors, from a cultural appropriation watchdog group. Her phone, once buzzing with the constant chatter of opportunity, was now silent except for the clipped, professional tones of her lawyers, their voices a river of cold water running through the burning wreckage of her career. She was a pariah, her name synonymous with deception in the circles she had worked so hard to conquer. Her public apology, when it finally came, was a carefully staged event on a major business network. She sat, perfectly coiffed and dressed in somber navy blue, under the harsh studio lights. The words she spoke were written by a team of crisis managers and attorneys, every syllable designed to mitigate legal liability rather than express genuine remorse. "I deeply regret the misunderstandings that have arisen regarding the sourcing and cultural context of the Lancaster Pure product line," she said, her eyes fixed on the camera, her expression one of pained concern. "The narrative around my grandmother's journey was intended as a tribute, and I am sorry if it was perceived in any other way. We are committed to reviewing all branding and marketing materials." It was a masterclass in non-apology, using words like misunderstanding and perceived to shield herself from the truth of her deliberate, calculated lies. She was sorry for getting caught, sorry for the financial ruin, but the core of her, the part that had believed her own superiority gave her the right to steal and lie, remained untouched, hardened by the experience rather than humbled by it. While Sarah navigated the hollow rituals of her public downfall, a very different conversation was taking place in a quiet, sun-drenched cafe across town. David Chen had arranged to meet with Riya and her mother Mira. He listened, not as a businessman now but as a witness, as Mira, her voice soft but steady, filled in the painful blanks. She spoke of her 20 years of service, of the casual conversations in the kitchen where she would share simple home remedies passed down from her own mother: a turmeric paste for inflammation, coconut oil for hair health, a tamarind mix for digestion. She spoke of how Sarah would initially listen with vague interest, then later with a keen, predatory curiosity, taking notes, asking specific questions, but always framing it as a quaint novelty of Mira's simple background. The sacred ancient family secrets of the Lancaster lineage were, in fact, the collective household wisdom of millions of Indian mothers and grandmothers, overheard and stolen by a woman who then claimed it as her own refined inheritance. David was not just impressed, he was moved. He saw the profound injustice not just as a financial fraud, but as a personal and cultural violation. He saw the stark contrast between the woman who humiliated her employee for speaking Hindi and the woman who then profited from that very language. His proposal, when he made it, was not one of charity. It was one of recognition. He laid out a plan for a new company, one built on the very principles Lancaster Pure had so grotesquely violated. The recipes would be sourced ethically and rightfully from Mira's knowledge. The branding would be transparent, with clear, accurate translations and a narrative that honored the true origin of the knowledge, not fabricating an exotic fairy tale. Riya, with her fluency, her integrity, and sharp intelligence, would be the chief operating officer, managing the business and communications. Mira would be the head of product development, a title that finally gave credit where it was due. They would be equal partners. He would provide the capital and business expertise, they would provide the soul. The launch of Sharma Heritage was a modest affair compared to the glitzy, deceptive launches of Lancaster Pure. There was no mansion, no crystal glasses, no grandiose claims. It was held in a small, elegant event space. The packaging was beautiful but honest, the ingredients listed clearly, the Hindi script on the labels accompanied by its direct English translation. The story told on their website was Mira's story. The response was not a billion-dollar investment, but something more valuable. A groundswell of genuine support from people who valued authenticity, who appreciated the cultural respect, and who were captivated by the real, powerful story of a mother's knowledge being rightfully honored by her daughter. One lonely evening, surrounded by the oppressive silence of her empty mansion, Sarah Lancaster found herself scrolling through news alerts on her tablet. An article from a respected business blog appeared. From scandal to success, Sharma Heritage rises from the ashes of Lancaster Pure. There were pictures of Riya and Mira, standing beside David Chen at their launch event. They were smiling, not the polished, empty smiles from Sarah's old brochures, but smiles of genuine pride and accomplishment. Riya looked confident, poised, a leader. Mira looked dignified, her worth finally recognized and celebrated. Sarah read about their vision, their partnership, their respect for the culture she had only seen as a tool for profit. The final, most profound humiliation was not the loss of her wealth or her status. It was this. It was the sight of the maid and her daughter, the people she had considered beneath her notice, the ones she had belittled and dismissed, not just succeeding, but building something true and strong and good on the rubble of her own lies. They had taken what she had stolen and returned it to its rightful owners, and in doing so, had created something far more valuable than she could ever have imagined. The lesson was delivered not in a courtroom or a boardroom, but in the quiet glow of a tablet screen, and it was a lesson in true value, a value that could never be bottled or sold, only earned through honesty and hard work. And if you've learned something valuable today about the importance of integrity over illusion, if you believe in supporting stories where truth triumphs, then we invite you to become part of our community. Subscribe to stay connected with narratives that matter, that inspire, and that remind us of the real foundations of success. Your support helps us continue to share these important lessons. Subscribe now.